Where the out-of-school community is. It's much more organic.
Hello, and welcome to Good News Rhode Island, the show about Rhode Island and the people and places and events that make Rhode Island a great place to live and that build our communities. So I want to welcome today somebody who's working very hard behind the scenes and even nationally in front of the scenes. Hillary Salmons is here. She's the executive director of PASA, Providence After School Alliance. And we're so happy that you're here, and we're so happy to hear about the work that you're doing and the people and organizations and companies that are coming in to help with kids, raising kids. And I think it's a wonderful thing. So well, thank you.
No, thank you, Juliana. I'm totally psyched to be here and share and rave about what's happening in Providence because it's cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's really
great. Cool. It is cool. Okay, we need to start with you because there's probably somebody out there who takes part in PASA who's thinking maybe she or he could do the same thing at some point in the future, work after school with kids. So I want to ask you, how did you get to this place of starting this wonderful organization?
Well, I was very fortunate because 15 years ago, this is our 15th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The Wallace Foundation approached the city, and the Wallace Foundation was investing in after-school programming and wanted to look at building a citywide systems of after-school programming. They had moved to the point of thinking about how do they get to scale. And they approached Providence and then Mayor David Cicilline and said, you look like a city that has a lot of after-school assets. Would you be interested in our investing in the city? And he got together with Elizabeth Burke-Bryan at Kids Count, whom everybody knows.
Yes, yes.
And they had a planning process involving over 100 people for a half a year to look at what was the need in our community and what was the potential to grow an after-school citywide public-private partnership. And they asked me to head it up, and 15 years later, we're hard charging.
You have stars on. So what were you doing before this?
Before that, I've done a lot of nonprofit management work, everything from helped organize a group in Japan when I lived in Tokyo called Refugees International, and that I happened to be there when the boat people crisis occurred. And then I worked for a settlement house in Brooklyn when I moved back to Brooklyn, and then when I moved here, and got involved in what was then the HELP Coalition of colleges and hospital presidents that at the time were avoiding paying taxes to Buddy Cianci, and they wanted to invest in children and health initiatives. So through that initiative, when I first moved here 20 years ago, I learned a lot about the city and its potential. And there's just so many talented human beings, organizations. So I was privileged to get oriented, so I was probably right for this position.
You really were. I mean, it's like it was formed for you. So as you go around the city and as you meet more and more people, tell me about some of that talent that comes out while you're looking for talent to help your kids.
Well, in the first years we looked for it, and because we decided in the plan was to focus on middle school. And as it turns out, cities around the country, and Providence included, have a decent number of programs that service younger age, elementary school age, and then high school, because high school is when you start to want to, get jobs and learn specific skills. But middle school has really been a deficit area in terms of programming for not only Providence, but across the country.
It's also a time of huge change for kids, and they don't really adjust well to the schools, the way the schools are teaching.
Absolutely right. And they're at a point where they're kind of sick of being in the same place playing board games and doing arts and crafts. They wanted an adventure, and that's what the youth told us. This planning process really asked the youth, what are you looking for?
Oh, that's smart.
It was a really smart planning process. Hats off to David Cicilline and to Elizabeth Burke-Bryan. And the youth said they really wanted to have a meaningful, connected adult, but they wanted some adventure, to explore, to experiment, to test things out and try stuff out. And we really had to kind of canvass the community to say, where can we grow the capacity of our nonprofit community? And there are a lot of organizations, City Arts, Save the Bay, the Y, Boys and Girls Club, some stalwart organizations that were there, but we really needed to kind of build the capacity of the city to do more for the middle school age, because as you said, it's a challenging age. They're really trying to get beyond their school and their home and explore and discover and experiment. And so we needed to make sure that we were building programs, designing programs that really met the needs of young people.
So as you started working with children who are teenagers, really, and you watched them change through your program, how did it affect their school, the relationship with their schools and their relationship with their grades and et cetera? Have you studied that?
Well, in the beginning we were asked very early on by the Wallace Foundation, and many funders ask us, how can you improve math and reading scores?
Oh.
And because that is sort of an obsession of the public schools. I would have to say an over-obsession. And actually my response at the beginning was, we're going to be about art, sports, experiential learning, getting out in the field, making, doing, and I think indirectly we could inspire improved academics. But since the schools have, particularly in Providence, had sort of drilled down to a lot of math and reading only, not enough sports.
Test-oriented.
Exactly. So I felt as if we were really going to respond to the developmental needs of the young people we were going to serve. We needed to fill those gaps of opportunities and make sure that the arts programs had been minimalized. We needed more theater, we needed more dance, we needed more music, we needed more sports. It's sort of like everybody gets excited about the one basketball team, when in fact we've built up a system that has martial arts, that has wrestling with Beat the Streets, that has sailing with community boating. We realize that oftentimes low-income kids get minimalistic services, where upper-end kids in Barrington and wherever are getting a huge amount of choices. And that happens in their schools, it happens in their communities, and we realized what we needed to do is make sure that the young people have choices, because that's what they wanted. They wanted to try stuff out. So when we asked young people, what sports do you want, they kind of knew football, basketball, baseball, and that was it. And we felt as if, okay, if we were to expose you to more, and you tried it out, we've got young people now who love rugby. We've got a group of Brown athletes coming to teach kids rugby. Beat the Streets is a wrestling program. So suddenly, 15 years later, it makes sense that young teens want to do things and experience things and try things out. And we've got to provide them a menu of stuff.
You just said something really interesting too, if I can take a sideline, and that is you said Brown athletes?
Yeah. There's a fun
program. So you have Brown students
tutoring coming in? Not tutoring.
What I mean is
sports.
Teaching.
Yeah. It's been a new initiative that was launched by Brown, which we are thrilled with, that athletes off-season come in and introduce young people to sports. So they've done some lacrosse with Moses Brown youth, and they've been offering rugby and swimming. And we've predominantly I pay for groups because it's just more reliable and consistent, and then we can manage a schedule with them that makes sure that we reach more than one school and reach more young people. So again, I do feel like this enhancing the school experience, making sure that we have a seamless day that includes fun, choice, experiment, trying stuff out, and discovering who you are and what your passions are is something that the school day and schedule doesn't allow young people enough time.
It's true. It shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, it is. But if you get out on the boat at Save the Bay and you're pulling up lobster and pulling them apart and analyzing them, then suddenly that young person says, oh, I want to be a scientist someday, or this is what environmental protection means. This is why science and math matter, because when you take measurements about water quality out of Save the Bay, oh, science, math makes sense to me now. When you teach those subjects in a vacuum, particularly I think for young low-income kids who don't have all the experiences that upper-income kids have, to give them context, we try to provide the context and give meaning to learning and make sure it's fun.
I can't believe there hasn't been a study that shows how much this increases the learning power of the kids, or the interest of the kids, or the concentration of the kids, or the test scores of the kids even.
Well,
God forbid.
Actually, there has been a study, and actually the Wallace Foundation funded a 3-year study of our initiative in its 5th year. And it showed that, and it's become the study for middle school across the country, that when you engage youth in quality learning experiences that provide them choice and variety and really match their youth development needs and interests, you in fact do improve school attendance, school behavior, and engagement in learning. It's really hard to sort of take a pool of kids who are participating in our program and not participating, and then to sort of show that you get the math and reading scores up directly as it relates to that programming. I think that's where funders have unrealistic expectations. But I do think if you think of the schools that are either private or charter or in well-funded communities, they offer a whole variety, from theater production to film production to internships. That's a part of the school life, and it hasn't been the case as robustly until I think we built this system in Providence. So it is a complementary effort.
It's kind of like giving them what we consider to be private schools, or at least schools where classrooms are small, giving them that option.
Well, that's right.
Of learning and talking.
There's no way you'd pay $30,000 a year to go to a private school if they didn't have the lacrosse program, if they didn't have the woodworking shop, if they didn't have the dance and the theater. It's sort of a given that when you're shopping for a private school that you want all of that too. And it's sort of ridiculous that young people who live in low-income communities are deprived of the same opportunities that I think the higher-end zip codes get. So I do firmly believe that, in fact, we need more of that in communities where young people don't get the chance to go on incredible summer vacations or holiday trips or get to go to see museums every weekend, because I think what motivates all of us, and if you were to think back on your childhood or any of us in our childhoods, it's really those individual experiences where you discover your passion, be it cooking or whether it was the Boy Scouts and your outdoor exploration. It's those things that help define who you are as a person and start to shape your interests. You loved animals, and then you became interested in science, and then you thought you'd be a vet, and then you ended up being a doctor. If you really think about child development and even your own development, it's got to be part of the learning process, I think. And that's why we've tried to figure out how to do that at scale and to reach as many young people as possible.
What are the kids saying?
Kids love it. I've got young people who are interesting. I have this amazing gal, and she's much known in Providence, Genesis Sanchez, and she's phenomenal. She came to this school system in her 6th grade, didn't speak any English, from the Dominican. She's now at Columbia Law School. And she once toured the governor around one of the programs as a law student, and she basically said to the governor, if it weren't for hip hop, I wouldn't have gotten up the confidence to learn English and to speak. And the reason I'm a confident and want to be a prosecutor is because I had these experiences in the after zone in middle school where I learned English from my peers, I got my confidence up, and I got to try stuff out. And students over and over again tell the story of how there's a wonderful gal who just started at Smith who came and spoke to a group community recently and said she discovered her passion in science and engineering from her participation in the Afterzone, then going to work with a group down City Design. She learned about designing graphics, then wanted to learn calculus, and she's been accepted at Smith. And she attributes all those value-added experiences to discovering her talent, interests, and what she wants to be. So I think it's essential. It's essential no matter what your income, that we enrich the lives of young people in a way that allows them to discover what they can do and who they can be.
I realize we have a very limited amount of time, but I want to know what, if you could change Providence school system, what you would do to expand the curriculum. Is that, I'm sure, but, or maybe.
You know, I actually think everything that we do, I think, really relates to what the schools need to do. We zero in on instructional practice. I have a team that looks at quality in practice, and the things that we work on in our practice are teamwork, problem solving, effective communication, building life skills. And I do think those are things that teachers ought to be thinking about. But I actually think that when you're thinking about learning as being testing, experimenting, doing, it's more experiential, more project-based, related to the real world and relevant. And if your practice is deeply pulling those skills and interests out, no matter what the content, eventually you'll get to great readers and great mathematicians. But if you focus only on math or reading without the context and the application, it becomes irrelevant. So I do think that, people call it experiential learning or project-based learning, inquiry learning. That's what science and STEM and art are all about. I think we really need to reframe the practice and re-envision what the goals and objectives are. And if, quite frankly, the teacher practitioners in the schools were working more closely with the informal educators out in the field, I think we'd have a slam dunk, beautiful education system. But we really need to get the practitioners defining their visionary goals, what their practice is going to be, and how that developmentally works from elementary to middle to high, so that young people advance along a continuum. So for me, it's about inquiry learning, and that's what we do at the Providence After School Alliance. We look at where do we want to head, what problem are we going to solve, and what content and knowledge and skills do you need to get there.
So do you think there's a possibility of that kind of dialogue with the school and the after school?
Yes, we actually got funded by the Walmart Foundation for 3 years to develop a STEM summer learning program.
I'm surprised it's Walmart. Isn't that amazing?
I know, and I have my political things, so I was a little nervous. But hey, listen, as I jokingly say, I'll pimp for kids. If it's a lot of money, I'll take it because it's going to change lives. So we ran a summer program, and we did that with informal educators alongside formal educators. So we invited teachers to join up with our partners, Save the Bay, Audubon, the Zoo, Down City Design, and we invested heavily in the teacher training and professional development part of that. Like, how would we co-design a STEM program that was field-based in the summer? And we spent 90 hours up front. The teachers were fabulous. And they were fabulous because they said it was the first time anyone ever asked them to design and co-build an exciting curriculum that was youth-centric. And we spent 90 hours up front in the spring, and then they went out in the field with all of these different partners, and they co-built a summer experience that, quite frankly, the American Institute of Research has just done a completed study on that, and they said it was one of the best, most engaging. The youth were the most engaged of any STEM program they'd seen in the country. Now, unfortunately, the city school department was funding us, and we had to turn the money down, $250,000, because they wanted us to focus on math and reading test scores in a 6-week time period. I said, I'm not going to get your math and reading scores up in 6 weeks, but I am going to get kids to be engaged in science, want to be engineers someday, and see and make the connections of, wow, math is cool, because I used it this summer to build a cardboard boat that floated in the Save the Bay pond. So it's how we engage the practitioners, the teachers, and at Providence After School Alliance, we engage, and we do hire teachers too. We hire some fabulous teachers that want to teach theater, that want to teach poetry, and we have theater productions in each of the middle schools. We're in 5 middle schools. The teachers are actively engaged in that work, and they're really asked to co-design and do this, and they're capable of doing amazing things when charged to be involved in the shaping and co-design. So that's our premise in the after-school field, and I've got colleagues all around the country. We really try to tap the expertise of the instructors, be they ceramicists or jewelry makers or architectural designers or rugby instructors.
I can't imagine that everyone in the program isn't changed and encouraged and sort of enlivened.
Well, everybody's having
I'm saying
fun,
the teachers
so
who have been in
it
classrooms with dusty books and all the problems of the classroom, and then they go out and there they are by Save the Bay in that beautiful place.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It just must enliven everybody.
It does, and the nice thing about our system, people often ask, are we a program? We're 70 different programs, and what we have done as a sort of airport authority of after school for middle school and our growing high school system, we bring together all the amazing practitioners, organizations, and we all agree on a set of quality standards and some metrics like the team building or the effective communication or the problem solving that we're all going to do in whatever our environment is. But we're all trying to share practices and build a collective community, and it's fun. And it's engaging as much for the adults as it is for the young people. So when you go into the after zone at a Nathan Bishop or a Roger Williams, there's a whole group of people, from the wrestlers to the theater instructors, who are having fun, and the young people are too. And quite frankly, if you're going to get young people motivated about learning, you got to have
fun. You got to have fun.
And the teachers are going to love their subject and their students. And that's really what it's about.
Tell me the difference between the middle school program and what you envision for the after-school programs then. And that is HUD?
The hub. We call the high school program the hub, and we're in 3 high schools. We just picked up a partnership with Hope High, and their program's called H2O. We're excited to be working with Hope and Juanita Sanchez and 360. And then we offer a program that's been funded by the state called Advanced Course Network, where we offer career-related programs with our partners for which young people get high school credit and they're guaranteed a summer job if they do really well in the program. So we're trying to make sure that we're building a set of club experiences in the high school that level up to a set of career-related programs so they can go deeper, get course credit. And then what we try to do is match up with the Mayor Alorza's Summer Youth Employment Program. He's been fabulous to invest in summer learning and summer youth employment, so that the young people who are working at Down City Design, designing a park structure, have the opportunity for a related summer youth internship or employment opportunity, so that their exploration of interest in the after zone in middle school grow to greater intensity in high school, and that they start to be career connected and ideally matched with summer youth employment or internships, so that they start to make the career college connections that we think are invaluable. And if we get a group of college volunteers, we get them from Providence College or Brown, they can start talking to them about college connections they need to start thinking about. So for us, the systems part of what we do is building this continuum from middle school to high school, much as our families have, how we steward our youth and our children through middle school and high school. We want them to try stuff out, then we want to start to figure out what their talents are, and then make sure they're having the experiences and the summer jobs, and then applying to colleges so that they're honing their interests. So that's why we've been really thinking about and partner with the city and all of our nonprofits to build this continuum. So it's not like scattershot or a patchwork quilt, but young people can come to a place and see a menu of things in middle, a menu in high, and then we're helping them make connections. So that's why it is complicated that we've built a system, but I think for the families and the young people, it enables them to streamline their choices and grow.
And how do you deal with language differences?
Well, I try to make sure we do have Hispanic, we have mostly Hispanic youth. It's 65%, I think, in Providence, and about 61% last year for us. With 2 things, we try to make sure that we have a very diverse range of students and staff, but most importantly, that we allow students to try things out and learn from their experiences. So, I mean, I lived in Japan for 8 years, and if I didn't go in the supermarkets and open a jar and test it out and ask a lady next to me whether that was mustard or ginger, and if I didn't experience it and try it out, I wouldn't have learned the language. So, quite frankly, when you're on the soccer field and you don't speak English, and all your English-speaking compadres are saying,
you're
yes,
screaming,
good, great goal! It's a way to try out your language experience safely with your peers.
And you have to speak.
You do.
You can't be reticent.
If you're on the team, whether you're co-designing something, or you're painting a mural together, or you're in a theater production, you've got to learn to speak, and you want to, because you want to be part of it.
I hope someday I get a tour.
Oh, I'd love it.
Anyway, I want to ask you about the national movement now to think about after-school programs and the importance of sort of helping, enriching the lives of students.
Well, what's exciting is the after-school field is really building itself at a state level and at a city level. And in Rhode Island, we've got, and I'll tell you about this report after I tell you what's happening nationally, because we have a very great after-school systems team. It's called the Rhode Island After School Network that operates and builds connections through the whole state. But nationally, there are cities around the country that the Wallace Foundation initially funded, but we've grown a network. I helped with my colleagues in Boston and Chicago, Washington, D.C., Palm Beach County, Oakland. We formed a group called Every Hour Counts, because we realized that as we building city systems, public-private partnerships with mayors, with schools, with the nonprofit sector, focusing on quality, it's complicated work. And we could learn from each other. The cities could, the mayors could. So we started inviting cities in that were getting funding, and it's now built to a membership body of 24 cities. And we're all heading off to Denver in November, and there are 40 cities coming to learn from each other about how do you build the structure, what's the governance look like, how do you measure quality, what kind of programs are right for elementary, how does it differ from middle and high. And quite frankly, about 30 of those 40 cities have come to Providence, taken a tour. And when they finish their tours, I usually head them off with a zip drive and say, here are all the MOUs, the documents, the procedures, here's the best practices, go forth. So I'm very excited. New Bedford's a city that we've been stewarding, and New Bedford is coming to the Denver conference. We've been sharing our work with Worcester, but as far away as Omaha, I have a really strong partnership with Richmond. They've totally copied my middle school initiative, and so has Nashville, the Nashville After Zone. And so I send my staff to train and work with the Nashville team so that they're trading secrets and learning and benefiting from each other. And we, as a group of colleagues, we do a lot of grant writing together, we share practices together, so we're really building the after-school systems building field and hopefully reaching thousands and thousands of youth. And that same thing has taken place in the state, and I'll tell you about this great report that talks about what we're doing.
Makes me want to, I don't know, cheer. I can't imagine that this couldn't be done with public schools communicating with each other as well.
I think the potential's huge. I really do, and I'm fairly excited about we're at this turning point in Providence, and I think it's very brave that the state is willing to take over the city and that the mayor has been so supportive, as this has the community. I think it's going to be essential that state takeovers have not gone well unless you involve the community. So the community assets that the commissioner and whomever the new superintendent or receiver is really ought to be looking at the talent base it's got in the after-school community, and the bridge building needs to occur, because it would be insane, in my opinion, to just do another command and control, let's fix it, focus on math and reading, here's the curriculum, it's all canned, let's pull everybody up by their bootstraps. No, why don't we have the youth, the parents, the after-school community, the teachers themselves all co-design this and build on our assets.
Sounds frightening.
I think it sounds fun. I'm up for it.
Sounds wonderful.
Well, it's an opportunity that Providence and the state have. I'm excited.
And,
I'm nervous, but I'm
the funds
excited.
are going to flow from the state as well as from the city as well as from private sector.
I hope that happens for Providence, and I hope in that same process we're building the after-school work. Tomorrow, the United Way is hosting a Lights On breakfast and announcing the state of after school in Rhode Island. That really is a document that looks at what have we got in this state and how do we build it. We're, as a state, is serving about 10,000 young people at all different ages, but the demand is 10,000 more families and youth could benefit from these programs. And unlike some states, Massachusetts, I know California puts a huge amount in, Michigan, a lot of states are investors in after school, and it's time for our state to start making an investment, because quite frankly the after school work in our state is funded by the federal government, and that's always precarious, and it's funded by Mayor LaLorza has put a huge amount in, and into the city of Providence, and also the private sector, and it would be great if we got the state.
Well, it would be, and I certainly wish you every possible good wish. And I am so happy to meet you and to hear about your program. And I hope there are many parents here who will get their kids involved, but also many kids who will ask to be involved. Thank you so much for all you're doing for Providence.
Thank you so much.
You.
I hope people contact me and I can scoop you up.
Okay, so look up RASA, is that right?
PASA.
PASA.
Providence After School Lines.
PASA, that's right. Anyway, thank you for watching Good News Rhode Island, and we certainly hope there's good news near you, just like PASA, and that you're going to help to make it.